And we're in the process of seeing where people are from and who's here. So I'm Lori, and I'm currently in Hollister, California, sort of north central coast, inland a little bit.
I'm Evelyn, and I'm from near Morgan Hill, friend of.
I'm sorry.
I'm Evelyn. My name is Evelyn, and I'm from Morgan Hill, California.
Welcome.
I'm Lynn, and I'm from Salem, Oregon.
I'm John. I'm from Miami, Florida.
I'm Bill, and I'm from Louisville, Kentucky.
I'm Dirk Van Putten from Holland, Michigan, which is right on the shores of Lake Michigan.
I'm Sandra. I'm in Hollister too, California.
I'm Ian and near Hell, Michigan.
All right. And Doug, did you introduce? Did I miss that?
I was waiting for Deborah.
I was waiting for Doug.
What a great partnership.
Doug and I are in Hilo, Hawaii at 2 different locations.
Welcome, everyone.
Go ahead, Lori, take it away.
All right. So I'm going to share screen.
We have another one, Anne.
Just trying to figure out which one. This one, I guess. Okay, did that work?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so I'm talking today about curiosity and connection, what horses are teaching me. And I want to start with a couple of things. The first is that we can understand something intellectually, but until we know it as we live and breathe, we haven't really integrated that knowing. So keep that in mind. The real shift happens when we can learn something so well that we can do it as easily as we breathe. I'm going to start with a quote. This is by the psychiatrist, Dr. Brian Weiss. Wisdom is achieved very slowly. This is because intellectual knowledge easily acquired must be transformed into emotional or subconscious knowledge. Once transformed, the imprint is permanent. Behavioral practice is the necessary catalyst of this reaction. Without action, the concept will wither and fade. Theoretical knowledge without practical application is not enough. So I'm a photographer. I've been in business for how many years is that? 20 years. And I have done a lot of different photography in my 20 years in business. But in 2018, I found horse photography, and I'm going to explain that. And that just takes you into why I've come in contact with horses and have learned the things that I've learned in being around horses. So in 2018, actually in 2017, I found this Facebook post. So this is an example of the Facebook post. Someone was in Nevada and they found the wild horses and photographed them. And I saw this post and I said, I want to do that. I'm putting that on my bucket list right now. So I had that on my bucket list. Next thing that happened for me is I came across this magazine article and found out that there's a wild horse sanctuary near me in the same county that I lived in. So I went to their website and I looked at the Visit Us tab and looked at, how can I go be with these wild horses and photograph them? And sure enough, there was a week-long photography workshop with a renowned equine photographer, Tony Stromberg. And I got so excited. And I clicked on that, went to his page, scrolled down, saw how much it cost, and my heart sunk. And I thought, I can't afford that. So I went back to the Return to Freedom page and started looking to see, like, what else could I do? If I can't go for a week, which is what I really wanted to do, what else can I do? And then I looked again at that week-long workshop and saw that the dates of that workshop included my birthday week. And it just, something clicked in me, and I said, oh no, I'm supposed to go. I've got to figure this out. So what happened next in my mind is I thought of a friend who had done a GoFundMe to do something that she really wanted to do, but didn't quite have the money for. So I copied her. I did a GoFundMe. I had lots and lots of people contribute. And within a couple of months, I had enough money to go. So I went and I was immersed in these bands of wild horses. And the transformation in my physical body was incredible. Just how I felt that week, capturing the images and being with the horses, it just literally transformed me. I didn't know at the time what was going on, but now that I've looked back and studied and read and heard stories, I understand that what happened that week is that the horses were helping my nervous system. So this immersion with the horses was transforming my nervous system, and it has continued to do so since then. After that week with the horses, which I tell everyone, like, they ask what was it like, I said it was literally like on cloud nine. I was on cloud nine the whole week and into the next weeks afterwards. So driving home afterward, I have driven this highway a number of times, probably hundreds of times, but I looked at the scenes differently. I looked at these horses in fields and horses in paddocks and horses in barns. I looked at them differently because I now had this experience of observing horses in herds, the way they had been on the range in the wild. And I just had this, I brought this other perspective with me going forward. The impulse to spend more time around horses was with me, and it has become a passion. So here's a little bit about what happened after that week. I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but I'll let you just look at it for a couple of moments. And this is just to let you know that I really got involved with as many things as I could in order to spend time around horses, understand what I was experiencing, understanding what I was seeing other people experience, and reaching the understanding that getting horses and humans together created really magical things. So one of the things, I have a couple of people with us today that are from my Monday meditation group. And in that, this started a little over a year ago. Thank you, Sandra, for inviting me. So every Monday we would gather and go to our friend Deborah's ranch. And she started out, had 2 horses. This is the brown horse here is Fiesta. And the experiment was, what happens if we meditate with the horses? So when we started out, we sat in a circle of chairs, just like you see these chairs here. And the horses, when we started out, were in the far end of this arena. just kind of standing in the corner. They weren't sure what we were doing. And each week, as we came together and sat in circle and got quiet and meditated, usually for an average of 20 minutes, give or take, slowly the horses got curious and would come over and get closer. And over time, they got more and more comfortable to the point where they knew what we were doing. They would come, greet us, touch us in different places, walk through the middle of us. And then when we would settle into meditation, sometimes they would go lie down. Sometimes they would just stand near us. And what I learned in reading about this is that what we created in this meditation circle was safety and congruence. So the congruence of our behavior, our nervous system, and the horses responded to that. So what I'm taking you through in this talk is that embodied safety unlocks curiosity, and curiosity unlocks connection. And this is Debbie's other horse, who has now passed away. So we honor her and the lovely experiences that we had with her over the year of being in meditation circle. So as a systems thinker here in the InThinking network, we're really concerned about when we think about systems. So the last piece of this is that connection transforms systems. So pulling from W. Edwards Deming's System of Profound Knowledge, these are the pieces that he put together and taught that are aspects of that profound knowledge. And over the years participating in In2, I really saw the things being taught in appreciation for a system, knowledge about variation, theory of knowledge. And I wasn't really aware of the psychological piece so much. It kind of felt in the background to me. So what I'm talking about today is me really discovering what I feel like is the foundational aspect of the psychology piece. And that is this idea of embodied safety. Psychology helps us to understand people, interaction between people and circumstances, interaction between a manager and his people, and any system of management. This is a quote from W. Edwards Deming. So I want to pause here and let you just think for a minute, reflect what has to be true for you to feel safe here, right now. Maybe an easy answer that you're, behind a camera and no one's looking at you. But just think about that in any situation. What do you need to feel safe? Maybe make a note, and maybe we can share that in the chat at the end. Sometimes you can flip the question around if you're not coming up with anything and think about, when do you not feel safe? And what do you need to reach that place of feeling safe? So I want to tell a little story about this group of people. I have blurred their faces on purpose to protect their privacy. But I was invited to facilitate a grief circle for the woman in the middle who has now passed away. She was diagnosed with ALS, and this was about 2 years after her diagnosis. And the disease had, I can't come up with the word. I just want to say, does somebody have the word for me? Progressed. Anyway, the disease had progressed to the point where she, if you don't know anything about ALS, what happens with the body is that the muscles just get harder and harder to move and control. So she described it as trying to move through cement. And at the very end stages of ALS, like you lose your ability to swallow, certainly your ability to talk. So you're basically just stuck in this body that you can't move. So it's a really horrible disease. So she passed away a couple of, I guess it was in June. But this wonderful group of people came together for Circle. Now, when it started out, it was just the friends, the female friends who had been in her circle. They did book club, they did homeschooling. So they had become really close. And when I showed up for the first circle, they said, well, the daughters would like to join. Is that okay? I said, oh, of course. The next circle, when people showed up, they said, can some of the husbands want to come? Is that okay? And I said, absolutely. And what I witnessed with this group of people was their commitment to love and honor this woman. And one of the men shared with me after a few of these circle meetings, he said, I was at work the other day and one of my coworkers came up to me and shared something. And I realized that he had never shared something that close and important and vulnerable with me before. And he said he realized that what he was experiencing in this circle was allowing him to be more open outside of this small community, outside of this circle of friends. And he was showing up differently at work. So what was happening was he was embodying safety, because this woman who all of these people had gathered around, who passed away from ALS, she in her life embodied safety. She was committed to that because of the course of her life. And all of these people learned to embody safety as well, and were bringing that into their lives. So I want you to just think about, if you can embody safety, how does that ripple out? How many other people does that touch? Who else can embody safety when they learn it from you? And if that can ripple out, that can transform systems, communities, families. So come back to that question again, if you will. When have you felt safe, and what made that possible? And again, maybe make a note. And if we have time at the end, I'd love to hear from you. So the ultimate technology is the human heart. And horses help us unlock that technology. In this picture, you see me standing with one of the wild horses at Return to Freedom. These horses have never been trained, they've never been bridled, they've never been ridden. They have complete autonomy, and they get to choose to walk up to a human or not. And it's this interaction between two beings, right? No words, no discussion. It all happens energetically. So the ability for me to embody safety and for the horse to embody safety, both of those things have to be in place for us to be able to connect. And what happens when we're this close is that our nervous systems are continually checking in with each other. So it's this continual process of I'm okay, you're okay, I'm okay, you're okay, I'm safe, you're safe. And this is how horses live together as a herd. Their nervous systems are constantly checking in with each other. And this is how they know safety in the wild and know whether or not they can relax or whether or not they have to run because of a threat. So these principles are utilized in equine assisted therapy and equine assisted coaching. So here's a picture of the gal on the left. She is an equine assisted coach, and she holds retreats at her home and works with people one-on-one for sessions. The principles that she utilizes and any of these practitioners utilize are that horses recognize a regulated nervous system. You can't fake it with a horse. You can't fake whether or not your nervous system is regulated. They know the difference. A horse becomes a mirror to tell us if our nervous system is regulated. In other words, if you walk in with a horse and they walk away, it means you've got some work to do. A horse will respond to clear communication, not mixed signals. So you can't walk in and say, I'm fine, when inside you are anything other than that. You're angry, you're depressed, you're grieving. You have to walk in with the same story outside that you have inside in order for the horse to connect with you, because they're looking for that congruence in your body and in your nervous system. So again, embodied safety is the same as a regulated nervous system. Another thing that that I learned in studying this and being exposed to different things is this idea of heart coherence. So heart coherence is when you're in close proximity to another being, human, horse, and your hearts and your nervous systems start to co-regulate. So we help each other. We can help each other as humans, and we can help each other as human and horse. Safety precedes curiosity. So this I definitely learned with horses. If they don't feel safe, they're not going to get curious. They're going to run away. But when they do feel safe, then they start to get curious. They're very curious animals. I learned this out in the field with the wild horses that returned to freedom. So this was one of my early days. I was down on the ground taking pictures, which I often do. I get low to get a good perspective for my images. And I was shooting and looking at my camera, looking down, and this horse came up behind me. My friend Kathy, fellow photographer, was out there and caught this picture. So I learned that if I am not sending my energy and attention directly at the horse, this is the first thing that helps them sort of drop their alert or their, it just helps them move into sense of safety because they know I'm focused on something else. And then they get curious and then they'll get closer. So I teach this now when I take people out. I now have that job that Tony Stromberg had for that first workshop that I went to. I'm so lucky and I love being able to do this. I get to take other photographers out and other people. You don't have to be a photographer. I take them out to return to freedom, to observe the wild horses and practice some of these things that I've learned. So when I take the photographers and I want to help them get closer to the herd, I teach them that we turn away from the herd. We don't face them directly. We don't look at them directly because they'll start out like you see in this picture. They're looking at us. They're not quite sure if they're safe or if they should turn and run. They don't know what we're doing. But they're looking and they're curious and they're on just a low alert. So what we do is we turn sideways and we kind of move sideways and we keep our attention on other things. We look down at the grass, we pretend we're grazing, we look off in the distance, but we don't put our attention and focus directly on them because that's what a predator would do. And they are prey animals. So that's how we get closer to them. Curiosity is possible when the nervous system feels safe enough to connect. And this picture is of a horse, a wild horse in Arizona, peeking at me, sitting on the ground with my camera, looking at me, getting curious. Now here we are in this picture back to Return to Freedom, and you can see I've got these other photographers have been able to move closer to the herd doing that technique that I talked about, just moving slowly sideways and getting closer. So look at the body language of the horses. You can see now that they weren't like that picture that I showed you a couple slides ago with their ears up and their face forward and both eyes looking at me, the photographer. This herd is now a mix of looking at the ground, relaxing. You can see one horse has got his back foot off the ground. They're starting to relax. Their heads are lower. Their eyes are lower. They're all, as a group, they're standing together so that they have their nervous systems connected because of their proximity. So they now feel safe. They're comfortable with us. We've all spent enough time. They know we're not a threat. And then we get to start to move among them and have the ability to get really close. It just happens with time and with them seeing the congruence in our behavior in our nervous systems. Connection is an emergent property of safety. Curiosity is the behavior of a system that feels safe. And yeah, this was a wild horse that chooses to be this close. Pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to talk about horse body language a little bit. So these are two geldings. They were stallions, but when horses are rounded up from the range, the Bureau of Land Management or the Forest Service, whoever's managing that particular wild horse area, when they round them up, they geld them. So any horses that are adopted from these roundups, the male horses have been gelded. So these two horses know each other. They're coming together. They're greeting each other. This is what the body language looks like. They're leaning in, smelling each other. Nobody feels threatened. These are two stallions living on the range, living in the wild in Utah. I visited this herd management area in April of this year. So look at the difference in the body language of these two stallions. You can see their posture, that it's almost like lifting your shoulders and throwing your shoulders back. That head is curved in more of a defensive, ready to fight kind of a posture. So they'll paw on the ground. They just are, saying, oh, I'm the tough one. No, I'm the tough one. And then they might paw at each other. They might stand on their hind legs. So anyway, this is just some different body language that I thought I would show you for some contrast. The other thing that I wanted to note is that when they finish, these two stallions, they finish interacting like this, they'll shake it off. You'll see them stand there and shake their whole body. And that's resetting their nervous system. They don't hold on to that. They don't hold on to stories. They shake it off and they move on. So here's some other examples of body language. To the left, again, two horses coming together, smelling each other, deciding as two beings whether or not they want to hang out in the same space. Same on the right. This is how they'll approach each other. This is just an example of two horses that the one horse on the right came in, wanted to spend time with the other horse, however that might be. And the horse on the left was like, no, I don't want to right now. So this is how the horse will communicate. He'll just increase his energy level, possibly nip at him. This is just how they communicate. And again, when they're done, they shake it off and they move on. They don't hold on, oh, he doesn't like me. They don't do that. Okay, now I'm going to shift into another experience to talk about kind of a little bit different experience with horses. But again, curiosity is the behavior of a regulated nervous system. So this picture was taken at the Making Pegasus Ranch, which is in Lockwood, California. I take photographers here to photograph horses that are bred. So these are domestic horses. They're bred on the ranch and they're used to human contact. So these are young horses in this particular picture. They're 1 and 2 years old. And I'm going to talk about the experience at Making Pegasus. So these horses are used to humans and they're in pastures and fields and paddocks in groups. So they are in herds. So we walk in also with the herd, but it's a very different experience. So here is my friend Stacy showing that in this one pasture, we had mares and foals, several of them in together, and they're curious and they'll come right up to us. So she's got 3 horses coming into her personal space all at the same time. And so she's got to manage, she's got 2 big mares and then this little colt colts are very mouthy. They use their mouth a lot. So he wants to figure out what her shirt feels and tastes like. So he's going to use his mouth to do that. So here are the photographers, and we definitely brief them and give them a little bit of training before we take them in with the horses so they know what to do. But what a different situation from being out with the wild herds. We don't have to, carefully move towards the horses. At this location, the horses already feel safe and they just immediately engage their curiosity and want to come over and see who we are, what we're doing, what we're wearing, what's that camera we're holding in our hands. So very different experience. What I have to learn in this environment is how to claim my space. How do I communicate with a horse that they are too close? So that's the practice there. What I've learned there is that embodied safety and confidence is how I communicate when needed. So here, I have to add this additional thing of raising my energy, looking at that photograph of how the 2 horses, how the horse raised his energy and pushed his energy towards the other horse to say, no, I don't want you in my space. I had to learn how to do this. So here we are out in this big herd of horses, and they just started moving towards me, towards us. You can see a couple other photographers in this photograph, and they're not charging. They're just moving at kind of a trot pace. And in this situation, I got to raise my energy, be really calm and assertive, and just think and say with my thoughts and my body energy, you will go around me. This is my space. You will go around me. And they always do. They always have. I've never had anything else happen yet, knock on wood. When I was shooting these pictures, I didn't have my camera in front of my face. I had my camera down kind of in front of my chest, and I was shooting with autofocus because I'm in this situation. I want to watch the horses and make sure they're going around me, make sure that I'm communicating with them with body language and eye contact. So just showing this to show that there are all kinds of situations and all kinds of ways to embody safety. So kind of coming to a close, I'm reviewing that embodied safety unlocks curiosity, curiosity unlocks connection, and connection transforms systems. I'm ending with my tagline, honor the moment and create the future. So honor this moment wherever you are with embodying safety in your community, your family, your social systems. Just, honor the moment, create the future. So set an intention of how you want to be going forward and what are the things that you want to practice. A few pictures of Return to Freedom and an invitation. Any of you are welcome to join me at Return to Freedom, and reach out if you're interested. I can tell you more. So that's the end. Here's my contact information, and I'll leave that for just a couple of seconds in case you want to note that. I can also put it in the chat. So I will stop sharing and open it up for questions and your comments about what helps you feel safe. So you can unmute yourself, and
I'll just tell you, Lori, another brilliant job. I am always learning from you, and this is something that, too bad everybody didn't know this, so that they wouldn't recognize aggression and say that, that's an okay thing all the time, right? As a technique. But what you've learned is remarkable, and helps us get better in touch, like you said, with our nervous systems. What is our nervous system? And it also explains why people might feel safe with us, right? Even if it's an uncomfortable situation, why people might feel safe with us because of that. And because I've been around horses all my life, it's like, oh, well, I guess I learned that, by being around horses a lot, right?
yeah,
Yeah, that's great. Great.
thank you, Deb.
Yeah, I thought about what makes me feel safe. It's animals. When I was a kid, if I was crying, the cat or the dog would come to me. Horses helped me through my teenage years. I'm also a photographer, and when I was starting my business, I was so stressed out, and I would go hang out with the cows in the field. And I found out that if I stood up, they were afraid of me, but if I crouched down, they'd come up. And one day I laid down, and they all came up and started snuffling around in my hair, and they lay down in a circle around me. It was so sweet.
Exactly. Thank you, Anne. You've had that same experience that I did.
Yep. It's precious.
Yeah, this is Dirk. To add to that, in my opinion, I have the same feeling about animals. It's to me related to two things, not only two things, but I think two significant pieces are the abundance of love, not necessarily always unconditional love, but generally, they're always happy to see you, etc. And then the curiosity. All the dogs I've had have always had a sense of curiosity. They haven't lost the interest in seeing or smelling new things. So I think that really draws me in, that they're constantly curious.
Thanks, Dirk. Yeah, I agree. And I think that, as I thought about the places I've worked, the corporate setting, some of the conversations at In2, and how we talk about, we need to process improvement. We need our people to be more curious about why they're doing things. And so over time, I figured out that's like, well, they don't feel safe to speak up. They don't feel safe to, to come forward and say, I noticed this. Why is this happening? If your manager or your supervisor shuts you down, if you come forward with that, then you don't feel safe to share those things. Or maybe in your family with a parent, or maybe in a partnership, or maybe in a social circle. So that's why I think this is so important to understand this, and for each of us to work towards better understanding of how to embody safety and how to create these aspects of a regulated nervous system. I mean, it makes possible eye contact, voice modulation, play, learning, collaboration, curiosity, and connection.
So, Lori, I know you through your husband, Tom, and we work together. Tom and I work together at Rocketdyne, which is a lot of smart people in making rocket engines. And in terms of safety and body language, what I picked up on early on was when you walk into someone's office and you're meeting with them and you say something that challenges the system, there'd be a handful that wouldn't roll their eyes. To me, and they're the ones I gravitated to, because no matter what I said that may sound outlandish to the rest, so many of them just, here we go. So to me, that the unwillingness to roll eyes was everything. That was a sign of safety.
Yeah, let's talk some more about that. What are some of the other things? I'd love to hear from some other people about behaviors in other people around you that helped you feel safe.
Can I share really quick, Lori, one experience we had during our meditation?
Yeah.
So one of the horses, Fiesta, that you saw in the picture, she was nudging on one of the ladies during the meditation and nudging on her and all over her, and she didn't understand why. And I just had a feeling that Fiesta was trying to tell her something, and I told her, I think she's asking you to speak up or say, I don't know what's going on in your life, but she's really asking you to talk, to release. And this lady, she did. She started talking and she cried and she released all the pain she was going through. And right after she did that, Fiesta walked away. It's just to show how much we are connected to them. How much do they feel what we feel? It was just a beautiful moment for me to watch.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Can I share something?
Yes, Evelyn, thank you.
It's about animals and feeling safe. I'm a wild bobcat rehabilitator with the purpose of returning the animals to the wild. I did it for like 20 or 25 years, and we would sometimes get baby bobcats in at the rehabilitation center that had the mother cat had been hit by a car or otherwise. And if they were under 6 weeks old, they know nothing about being a wild bobcat. So we take them in to a natural, it's an enclosure, but it's made as natural as possible. And we have a team of people that go in as the bobcat mother, meaning we actually wear bobcat costume and put the scent of the wild on us with the local herbs like the mountain sage, and covered ourselves. And we didn't speak in there with the bobcats at all. We didn't try to even pretend to be a bobcat. We just were quiet. And the little baby bobcat needed companionship, needed a mother. It helped us to get close to the bobcat, to give her medicine if necessary, to check on her well-being. But the very first one that I ever took care of was a really wild little baby bobcat. And I remember when she came in the enclosure, nobody could get near her. Because we had trees in there too, and she could climb up into the tree. She'll get away if she could. So I finally, I spent hours in there with the bobcat kitten. And this one time I just lay down on the floor so long. The sun was coming through. It felt really nice. And I fell asleep. And when I woke up, the bobcat kitten was sleeping on my head. So I did not move. But it was because I was so relaxed and I wasn't putting out any fear vibes towards bobcat kitten. And from that point on, we were able to get close enough as a bobcat mom. But then the other half of it is we also didn't want the cat to get used to people or be friendly to people at all. So when it came feeding time or something, cleaning time, a human would go in there in their regular clothes, and they they would talk and everything, so the bobcat learned to run and hide. So there was a difference. And but that was my experience with bobcat feeling safe with me, and me feeling safe with the bobcat too, because I went in with many bobcats and had to learn to approach or not be approached.
The nuances. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a story about an experience where they sensed safety from another person?
I'd like to talk about how I had to create safety in a leadership environment,
That'd be great.
because
Love to hear that.
what you said was something I figured out. Because how many times do we go into a meeting and comments are made that are hurtful, or people are yelling and allowed to yell, and and you don't know who they are, right? You don't, no name tags or anything. So just a couple things come to mind is I would require name tags for everybody, not just their name, but what their function was. Because if a new person came in, they couldn't feel safe because they didn't know, who is this person talking, for one. And then the other thing that my equal opportunity person told me, she said, your meetings are fun. I'm like, what? And she said, well, you don't let anything go by. It's always exciting, because I differentiated between two comments. The rare comment was the yeller, which I called a cockroach attack. It's like cockroaches I felt coming out of their mouth that, were yucky, and, they grow and they land on you and you don't know when they're going to come back. So very few times did that happen. The worst one is what I call a termite invasion. And those are those snarky little comments that people would say to undermine another person, like, Lori, that's just ridiculous. Just little teeny comments, but just like termites, I felt that, you let them go on long enough and the digs go long enough that people won't speak up. And in both cases, if the leader doesn't address it, then how can the people who, by statistically over 50%, don't like to talk in a group?
Right.
They rarely want to talk to an individual in a group, because all sorts of reasons we won't get into. But, how do you make someone feel safe? And then the final piece was, if you could guard that, then people could feel safe in the room. But then you had to ask the effective question, like you've asked the questions here. You had to ask the question so they felt safe to contribute. And I would notice if they hadn't contributed in the meeting. I expected everyone to participate in the meeting. And I might say, Lori, gee, you know so much about regulating our nervous systems. And I know that it's lunchtime, but instead of asking the questions, does anyone have any questions? Which is a horrible question, oh, by the way, to ask. I would say, Lori, would you mind speaking about this? I know everyone would really want to hear some more about that topic. And then they can feel safe. You have to invite. So it's kind of, you've just, you continue to blow my mind. But it's the same with animals, like what Sandra talked about, the horse nudging. So I feel like I was the horse, pushing on them. And also, if someone did say an out of turn kind of thing, I would just stop the meeting and ask a question and say, well, actually, I would make a statement. I would say, you said this. I wouldn't color it. I would just say, you said this, Sandra. And then I would say, what does anyone else think about that? And then they'd start laughing, because they knew that, the comment, because our rules of engagement of a meeting, you couldn't tolerate it. But I've never seen that anywhere else. Never seen it elsewhere.
Well,
one thing that kind of brings to mind is the de Bono's 6 thinking hats.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's structural elements of that really have to do with creating an environment for safety. It dissolves the debate dynamic
Mm-hmm.
or discussion dynamic by everybody doing the same kind of thinking at the same time. But also, I think in the kind of role playing aspect of saying I'm putting on this hat to play this role of this type of thinking, there's a dissociation there with it being kind of positional thinking
Mm-hmm.
that I think also has an element of safety to it in the dynamic.
Yeah, that's a good point. For anybody that's not familiar with the six thinking hats, it's just taking a group through looking from this perspective and that perspective and then that perspective, and the whole group taking each of those perspectives together, one after another after another. And you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was thinking about the commonality between why I feel safe with horses and what makes me feel safe or not with a person. It's a lot of it is silence. You know, if somebody, I'm a fairly confident speaker, but if somebody wants to jump in, and especially if they say something, offer some judgment about what I'm saying, even if it's positive, I just want to go away because they're not listening. They're all about themselves, is how it feels. It's the quiet and the receptivity that makes me feel safe in a person or an animal.
Yeah, I hear that. It reminds me of that knowing when to assert and bring your energy up and when not to, and you're so right. When someone's doing this instead of listening, what does that do to us?
But Lori, I want to add to what Ian was saying about the hats, what you were saying about the hats, and what Deb was saying is part of the beauty of the hats when you're using the black hat to look at an idea for its weaknesses, or the yellow hat to look at an idea for its positive attributes. Now, going back to what Deb was talking about is, I think what goes on in meetings, I think in corporations is, instead of attacking the idea, you attack the person. And so the beauty of the hats is you're trying to separate the idea from the person. And so even if you're in a caustic environment, going back to what Ian was saying, I think it lessens the defensiveness because we're talking about the idea. But short of that, if you want to destroy somebody in a meeting, you don't attack the idea. That takes effort. You attack the person. And then the challenge is not to go defensive when that happens. You want to bring it back to the idea, and the person brings it back to you, because they can't attack the idea, so they attack the individual.
I agree. I think that the same concept is there in trying to have dialogue instead of discussion, and kind of suspending the idea to explore the idea and separating that from the individual. But I've always found that you can kind of explain that in concept and say this is what we're trying to do. But I think it tends to we're so encoded with that debate type way of interacting, especially in a business environment, that it really helps to have some kind of a framework around it that kind of guides that thinking away from that dynamic.
We're starting to talk around the idea of worldview intelligence. So it's not really part of my talk, but I feel compelled to bring it up. Because what we're talking about is this reality that each and every one of us has a worldview that's based on how we were raised, what we were exposed to, how we've lived our life, what our values are, what our perspective on money is. All these different aspects of my worldview, we each have one, and we operate from that worldview. So when we're in a room full of people, we're in a room full of worldviews, and those are those perspectives that we're coming from. We're coming from those lived and developed thoughts and beliefs based on so many lived experiences. And so when we can start to get curious about one another's worldview, to understand, like, where are you coming from? Where is this comment coming from? Where is this need coming from? If we can embody safety and get curious about that, then we can move into side-by-side chairs instead of face-to-face chairs. And what I mean by that is, okay, I'm starting to see where you see things from. Let's talk about that from my understanding of where you're coming from. Am I accurate versus that idea that we were starting to talk about in some of the comments here of people coming at us or rolling their eyes or whatever. It's like, where does that behavior that that person is exhibiting, where is that coming from inside of their worldview?
So may I ask a question or two?
Yes, Bill.
It's difficult for me to focus in, but it's not. There's a part of Yusuf Karsh was my hero as a child, and I had a dark room. And when I think black and white or photography or my heart, there is a pace and rhythm that I have, but when you've been ostracized because of a word, mental illness, when it becomes objectified to the mentally ill, and I vested my life trying to understand my own madness as well as the madness of society. And when I have spent time going back to Arkansas where I was born, trying to reconcile this quietly, the tragedy is the very indifference towards pharma, psychology being confused with psychiatry. And yet with AI, when you start having a conversation with AI, it's funny, but it's tragic because to sit here very in a quiet room in retirement village where just before this started, I was out with my herd of bees. I went into the beehive and to understand how they behave and relate, horses, and wondering if you've ever been to Kentucky, because part of it, here's the breeding of horses, but here's the breeding of gaming, casinos, wanting faster numbers. So I'm curious as to how you map or sense the truthing of truths to where people can relate to others, but it's such a corporate challenge as well as an individual challenge to discover your heart and be real. Because the animal's nature perceives it. I was just intrigued with the design of nature, and it's very difficult to look at forage, better and healthier ecosystems when people can intervene and destroy the heavier, richer thinkers, which Deming Bill Bellows and Ian and many have been extraordinarily kind to me, but it's also, I'd hope to make a living. So if your currency is light in motion, then how do you sense your river running through you when a nervous system is jumping around? And I would zoom in. I just think a city light system is a nervous system or traffic. And to understand how do you show the Middle East or Europe that we can peacefully assemble a thought or create meaning as you expend horsepower in the machine as well as in the hoof to reach the audience here today or beyond. It's a fascinating topic. It's just extraordinary to understand what's happening within us. And I wonder how to frame it as questions, because it's not just complexity or emergence, it's much more than that.
Exactly. What a beautiful, poetic comment and inquiry, Bill. Thank you. That was
Oh, thank you
took
all.
me on a little journey there.
Well, you see the whole horses, and when I've been around Ian, and I think of steam was a great curiosity in locomotion. But when you hear it being taught now, it's often STEM, and people are dropping out the art and to have picked up art. Your brush is smarter than you. And to understand where does the track lead, or how do you ever put together locomotives or understand energy and motion, it's I think a little beyond Einstein, but to understand the precision that's required, how do you change the direction we're moving in now if people really want it? Because I've been silenced, believe it or not.
Well, that doesn't, I just want to acknowledge that it doesn't feel good to be silenced or to feel like you've been silenced. So I want to honor that and acknowledge that.
Thank you.
And from my perspective and my worldview, which is the only one I have and the only one I can share from, is kind of what I've presented today, is that it's what's in my power is how do I learn to embody safety, and how can I bring that to the world? I can only bring it to the places where I show up. And it might be meditation circle on Monday, and it might be a webinar on Tuesday. That's the only power I have. That's the only control. I don't have control, right? I was going to say that's the only control I have. I don't have control of any of this. But what I hope to do is bring ideas and thoughts, and hopefully something ripples out and makes an improvement. That's what I hope for.
Do you measure it? Are you able to measure the degree of
Not
systems change, total system? I mean, a systemic change in the system understanding itself.
not in a statistical way that I can present to anybody.
In an art
I
way.
think one of the things that you brought is just beauty on multiple levels. I don't know how you measure that, but it was wonderful.
Right. How do you measure the response to art?
Well,
So much of it is unseen. Anne?
no, I know Deming said the most important things are unknown and unknowable, but I don't think that's true. We make up measures all the time, and they're arbitrary, sure, but like for a while I was a quit smoking coach, and we would ask people to rate their stress and their cravings on a scale from 1 to 10. Well, it's not objective. You know, my 10 isn't your 10, but 10 means something. You can do that. It's just that we give up on measuring those things. And that's okay, I guess. But if you think measurement equals reality, then we've ceded the reality of these important things to the other things that can be measured, like money. Everything gets measured in money. It drives me crazy. And the implication is money is more real than love and beauty and friendship. And we can't let them do that.
Yeah. It's we lost Doug, and he was waving, maybe he was waving goodbye. So
Oh, I'm sorry. It was kind of a rant, but could I acknowledge you for something? Because you talked about from my perspective, and that's the only one I have. I feel like when we're talking about our own perspectives, that's where safety and authenticity happen. And if we start bringing in the idea of the truth and who's right, everybody thinks they're right, and everybody thinks that their perspective is the truth. And you don't get anywhere with that. So it's keeping the language focused on perspectives and the 6 hats and whatnot. So thank you, because you've been doing that reliably, and it does create safety in this conversation.
Thank you for that reflection.
Has anyone ever been to Kentucky in this group by chance?
Only a little bit.
That's fine. But it's so fascinating to hear you speak because my first physician I sought out would be invited to when the Dalai Lama was here. And if you know Thomas Merton, a little bit about Kentucky in the heart, because heart transplants would be first performed, I mean, here in Louisville and around, but to understand the beauty of the landscape. And then my own being trying to work as a city planner. And unfortunately, a man that was on Prozac would shoot up the printing plant, but people's perceptions became more ingrained. But to try to understand one's own heart, which when I came back from Waterloo, to try to become grounded again after being in academics in Little Rock, I went out to the art center and the teacher gave us a clay to just pinch pot. And so I felt like I was making my heart. And he said, it won't stand the firing. It withstood the firing because of its thinness of a top part, but I'm the one who unfortunately would have issues and be forcibly committed into the state hospital. But there's a part of what I wanted to explore was trying to understand the mind or the brain, and then how does one find the words that accurately or actually describe the verb, the to life, to enjoy. It becomes more difficult to attach something to it, but to really know that you're in a verb, it challenges the language. In film is somewhat a buffer or in between, but to even have a laptop that now works, it's much better than 3 months ago. But it's just been an incredible experience visiting with you and others.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe that's a good cue to transition to saying aloha
Yeah.
and
Well,
closing our webinar. Thank you all for joining, and anybody that's watching afterwards, thanks for watching.
Yeah, Lori, thank you so much. I will download and upload to our YouTube channel. I'll give the link to Perry. Perry's got all of your contact information to get it off. And next month we'll continue. Typically, this webinar is done on the third Tuesday of the month. We had a conflict last week, so we moved to the fourth. Next month, we're featuring Fazil Hayati, who's repeating his presentation from the In2 forum as well. And he's going to be talking about the work of Peter Schulte. So thanks, everyone, for joining. And Lori, wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Thanks for joining, Lori.
Thank you, Bill and Lori.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank
Aloha.
you. Thank you so much.